Move up. Go, love. There you go, love. Move up. Good job, love. Come on. In the yard. Go, honey. Come on, you gotta move. There you go, beautiful. You doing good? There you go. Move up. Pull up, move up. Good, you. Push up. There's the story.
Hey guys, welcome to Ballymullin Farm. Hope you're all doing well. It's the end of September here. Just thought I would do a real quick catch-up video on how the season's going so far. So we're obviously very near the end of calving. So we started calving on the 25th of July and it's all gone really, really well. Yeah, really good calving spread. A little bit slow now towards the end. We've got about a dozen left to go, but the end is in sight, I can sort of see now. So we're really looking forward to that. Bit of time before we start mating again. So the season was so far been really kind to us. Winter was fairly mild for the most part. Didn't have a lot of sort of really cold, wet weather, which has meant that utilisation's been really good, which has been awesome. It also meant we sort of haven't been making a lot of damage, so which is, you know, quite noticeable going back into those paddocks for the first time with the milkers. Once they're going back into those paddocks, that you don't have those paddocks where you do some years if you've made a lot of mud where they're quite open and stuff, so that's been really handy. In saying that though, August was quite a cold month, so lower temperatures than usual and quite a lot of cold wind. It was sort of a bit of a catch-22 there because it meant we weren't making mud, which was really good, but at the same time growth rates were quite slow, so that's been a little bit challenging. You know, the long shut up grass, the long grass that we had shut up from the previous season with the milkers, and then started going back into some of those other paddocks that we're sort of wintered on. We definitely noticed feeding them a little bit harder there, just because the you know, growth rates were slow through August. Yeah, we've been lucky that we've had lots of silage. So I made lots of silage last year and we've had lots left behind. So that's definitely helped us. And feeding a little bit of palm kernel at the cow shed too, just to try and help out as well there. Yeah, it's just one of those challenging things. I definitely have liked that it hasn't been a cold, wet winter and spring. You know, those days when you're just making mud day after day after day get really depressing. So we've really, maybe 2 days that I would say we've actually made mud. One day just turned out to be the day that I mixed the cows and the heifers together, so I think they, more than it being wet, they actually ran up and down their break all day and just trampled it into the ground. And then, yeah, one other day I reckon that was quite wet. And then apart from that, we've got a few days where just like the corners of breaks, you know, more where they're standing there in the corner waiting for me to come and shift them. They've made a little bit of treading damage, but those areas are actually already sort of tidying themselves up quite well. So yeah, animal health has all gone really well this year. Calving went fantastic. Only had to calve 2 cows so far, and both quite minor calvings. Just I think both of them were actually just a calf with a leg stuck down. So once you could sort of push the calf back in enough and get that leg popped up, the calf actually came out quite easy. One was quite a big calf, so it took a little bit of pulling, but the cow recovered really well. It was neither of them were really overly massively challenging. We've had only 2 dead cows so far. One was a Yoni's cow. She died, but was going to have to be put down anyway, unfortunately. So just one of those annoying things you get with, Yoni's pops up here and there now and then. The other cow sadly got flipped upside down in a palm kernel trough one night and lay there until the morning, and I lifted her out, but she just never came right, and I was never quite able to get her back up on her feet in a way, so she had to be put down as well. So that's been really, really good. Calves have come in really, really healthy. That's been a real benefit from the fine weather, and that is that cows have been calving really well on their own and mothering their calves really easily, so that's a really important thing to us. So our goal is to not bottle feed or tube feed any of our calves, and we've done that for a couple of years now, and it's worked really well. So the cows stay in the paddock for 24 hours with their calf after calving. So the calves feed off their mum, and they get their gold colostrum that way. So yeah, them calving and mothering really well is really important to us. So that's been really, really good. So one thing that's been a little bit more challenging is mastitis this year. So about 2 weeks ago, we just had a run of mastitis all of a sudden with cows that had calved and then were coming in with mastitis. I think what's happened there is it's at that point where I'm suddenly, really flat out, busy with, milking most of the herd. You've still got colostrum cows and bobbies and feeding calves and all that. And there's probably a couple of days there where I left maybe the cows and calves in the paddock a day or two longer than I should have done. And I just wonder whether maybe one of the cows maybe had mastitis, and then the calves feeding off the cows has spread it. So I think we had about seven or eight come in with mastitis just over a couple of days there, which is really, really strange. Which has been frustrating because, you're taking milk, you're having to tip milk out there. It's costing you money that way. It's costing you money by having to treat them. And then some of the time those quarters never quite come right again. One of them there hasn't quite come right, and I'm just in the process of trying to turn her into or not turn her into anything, sorry, just dry that quarter off. You turn her into a 3-titter, I think is what I'm trying to say. I feel like she may have had mastitis last year as a heifer, so I'm just going to go back and check that and see, because if that's the case, she may be a cow that we sort of don't want to be keeping in our herd. The sow count's really good. It's not super duper low, but it's sort of between about sort of 75 and goes up to about 160, bounces around a wee bit. Just I think as we're putting new colostrum cows in and that sort of stuff. We've only had 2 cows in the herd actually come in with mastitis, if that makes sense. So apart from those ones that have calved and come in with it, we've only actually had 2 that have, in the milking herd with mastitis. So that's been really good. And they've both come right really, really fast, which is really good. So I'm just hoping, it might be a learning curve for me maybe just next year to make sure that we're not leaving cows and calves in the paddock too long. Just one of those things that you learn. So yeah, as I said, growth rates and stuff through August were quite slow. They've finally come away, I reckon, the last 10 days, 2 weeks. I'm still not sort of racing to sort of speed the round up too much though, because you never know. We do often get a bit of cold, wet weather in October and stuff, so just being cautious. So we've been on about a 50-day round for the last sort of probably 3 weeks at least still. Just trying to really draw out what feed we do have, or push a bit of feed in front of us. And so that sort of has been working out around about that sort of 80 square metres per cow. Just yesterday I noticed in the afternoon the cows were a bit unsettled and almost a little bit hungry. I feel like maybe I was just getting to that point where I was holding them a little bit too tight. So just made the decision to speed up a wee bit. So we've gone to about a 42-day round, and basically that works out with our size herd at the moment. I think I worked out about 2 hectares per day. Majority of our paddocks are about 2.5 hectares, so what I was sort of working on will be we'll sort of get 2.5 days, or say 5 grazings, 5 12-hour grazings from 2 paddocks. So yeah, that's been a bit of a learning curve with the longer round, in that in the past I kind of thought, all right, I always just sort of thought 1 paddock, 24 hours, easy, 24-hour grazing, put them in there, shut the gate, and then it's done. But trying to run that slightly longer round has just meant thinking about it a little bit more. Going on 12-hour grazings, it takes you another 5 minutes to chuck a fence up. It's another job, but it definitely makes that management easier. So yeah, we'll get 2 full grazings and then 1 half a grazing. So we've got top gates in the paddocks. So the idea is 2 paddocks side by side. We'll get 2 full days, and then the sort of last fifth of each paddock will graze together as 1 grazing as well. So yeah, that's the plan. Talking about round length and stuff, one thing I sort of stuffed up last year with the longer round was just grazing residuals. So I was able to, you know, graze a really long round all through the season. Definitely saw the benefits of that, especially going through the drought, and then once things recovered there after the drought, after we finally got rain. But one thing I definitely got wrong was, yeah, the grazing residuals there early on in the first round. So I was still in that sort of mindset of, you know, you got to leave a little bit of grass behind. Don't want to chew these paddocks out too long, because, you know, used to being back in them in about 3 weeks time, and, you know, you don't want to be going back into them short the next round sort of thing. What I found with the longer round is that by leaving that grass, all it meant was we lost quality really early on. So, you know, the cows would come back into there the next round and they'd really only graze it down to where I'd hit it the last time round, which, yeah, lost us a bit of quality and then obviously a bit of production and stuff, and just made management a little bit harder. And especially in the paddocks that were a bit ryegrass, white clover heavy, so the ones that have got a little bit less diversity in them, once they sort of lost that quality a bit, it definitely got harder for the cows or harder for me to get the cows to graze those paddocks down. So yeah, this year really concentrating on hitting them. Don't measure pasture, but it's probably about that 1500 we're trying to hit in the first round, and yeah, it's going really good. Possibly helped a little bit by being a little bit tight, but yeah, really good. And then the idea is that that will keep quality going forward. And so the idea with the long round is you want to hit your paddocks, you know, your pastures right down, but then with the long round, let them grow right back up, you know, so you're getting as much of that growth as you can, as much of that bulk and stuff as well. And then by letting the grasses mature a little bit, by having a longer round like that, you'll be getting a bit more sort of leaf size and stuff, so you're gaining a little bit there as well through just being more mature plant. So Greg Barclay from Soil Connection, our regen coach, was here Monday last week, and he was really happy with how it's looking. He said a big improvement on last year, and he's really happy with how the farm's looking. Thinks it's really well set up. So that's really cool to hear. And his kind of comments was that the farm's, you know, ready to go for it, and we've just got to be patient, stick with our round length, and just wait until, you know, the weather conditions work out. Hey guys. Till the weather conditions work out right, and then, you know, things are going to be away and we'll be laughing. So that's really great. So the idea with that round length, I sort of worked out, we never really want to be any faster than about a 35-day round. So a lot of that is about bulk of feed. Like, there's a huge amount of grass growth between about 30 days and say 35, 36 days. Like, there's potential to gain a huge amount of feed there. So the idea, that's where that sort of 35 days comes from. So I worked out on the 2 hectares per day, if we sort of take our 5 hectares out, which we're going to be taking out shortly for our mixed summer crop, and then, you know, if a surplus comes along, about sort of 10 hectares, say, for silage, that'll put us on about a 33, 34-day round. So, you know, pretty close to where we're aiming for. So, you know, it's never a perfect science. Like, you can have the number in your head that you need to hit, but it always kind of has to work around paddock size and herd size and that sort of thing a little bit. So yeah, as I said earlier on, calving went really well. We were able to get some really, really nice keepers. A big thing for us, probably being a slightly smaller farm, is getting batches of calves at once, so you can kind of fill a pen in one go and you don't have 1 or 2 early ones, then you're waiting another week for the next ones, and then really funny growth stages. So that's worked really well. This is our second year in our new calf shed setup, and I think the first year that we've really got the Adlib feeding working really well. But yeah, basically the cows will calve, they spend a day on their mum to try and get that bonding with the cow and calf, you know, let the cow have her bonding, let the calf get that gold colostrum, I'm sorry, and then yeah, they'll go in the shed straight onto the feeder. As I said, we don't bottle feed or tube feed anything. And then, yeah, they'll go on Adlib. The aim is to have them on Adlib for at least 4 or 5 weeks. And then these ones here that I'm with at the moment, once they were dehorned, once they've had that sort of 4 or 5 weeks of Adlib feeding, we've put them outside and they've gone on once a day on milk replacer or milk powder. Yeah, and that's gone really, really well. These guys have been outside 2 or 3 weeks now, and yeah, they've just been absolutely thriving. We get to that point every year where their pens, they get to that age where their pens just suddenly get really wet, so they're eating a lot, drinking a lot, and yeah, they really need to be outside. So we've really hit that well this year. Other years, sometimes I feel like we've just struggled to get them out early enough, maybe sometimes waiting for dehorning and that sort of stuff, but it's all worked out really well this year. Loved the Adlib. Anybody who is potentially thinking of going to Adlib, I say absolutely go for it. And we've got a really simple system. So we've just got these Adlib, they're called Adlib 20 feeders from Milk Bar, big round drum. yeah, we just got one in each pen. They take 20 calves. We try to have sort of about 15 calves per pen, just so they've got a few spare teats. But yeah, we pull up there in the afternoon with I've got a tank with a pump on it that I made last year that we just fill the feeders up once a day. So yeah, they'll get warm milk for about the first 3 or 4 days. That just fresh colostrum that we warm up, and that's just while we're training them to go on the feeders. After that, once they're away, we just go to cold milk, and they tend to go really well. It's really interesting with the Adlib. You'll show up to feed the calves, and there won't be anybody yelling at you. They'll just be chilled out, eating, chewing hay, chewing meal, you know, that sort of thing. Some of them will come and have a feed while you're filling the feeders up. Some of them will just stay sitting down, you know, quite happy, and then they'll just feed whenever they want to over the next 24 hours. It was real interesting. I got into the habit of just shining the torch in the shed there as I was going past getting the cows in the morning, and you'll quite often see sort of about half of the calves up there like 5 o'clock in the morning having a feed. The aim with the Adlib feeders, the way we worked it, to fill them right up, but to try and make the volume so that they will sort of just empty them before we get there the next time to fill them up. And that's just so that you're not always adding new colostrum into the old stuff. We've always had a little bit of trouble in the past with the youngest calves never quite doing as well as the first ones, and I think it's just because the first ones kind of get the best of everything, and you know, the younger ones, we had a few this year that just got a bit shitty. I wouldn't call it scours at all, just a little bit of shitty bums, and then just were a little bit off colour when we swapped from fresh colostrum to stored colostrum. And it's just really hard with those young ones, because you get to that point where you suddenly don't have enough colostrum cows to you know, have enough fresh colostrum to be feeding them Adlib every day. But they've come through okay. We've just sort of taken a bit of extra care on them. So there's still about 15 or so of those younger ones still in the shed, and they are just finishing off the last of our colostrum. And yeah, that was our aim, was to try and make sure that those last ones got treated as well as the first ones. The youngest couple must be just coming up 5 weeks now, and then once the last of that colostrum runs out, they'll be coming outside and going on once a day on milk powder as well. So one of the things Greg commented on when he was here last week was just that he sort of thought the farm was looking really well set up, humming, you know, ready to go. But he sort of said the cows were not quite at the same level as the farm was looking, and I have to say I kind of agree with him. It's been a bit of a tricky one, you know, just with the weather and stuff. We've had so much wind this year that just miserable days really. The cows probably could do with like a really good week of fine weather that they can just sort of chill out in the sun without having to stand there, you know, trying to keep warm. But yeah, he just sort of said there was a few comments that he made there about what we might like to try, just to sort of get them going, get them humming basically. One of the things he commented on is that there's probably, you know, a bit of a shortage of fibre in their diet at this time of the year. Definitely a few cows with sort of quite loose poo and stuff. He kind of recommended, we've still got a bit of hay left, so he recommended giving a bit of hay to the cows as well as their silage, just to try and get a bit more fibre in their diet, try and get their rumens going. Yeah, so I've been trying that, and it's actually been working really well. I was a little bit dubious about feeding hay to the milkers, but no, they've been getting stuck into it, cleaning it all up. So yeah, I've been giving them about half a bale of hay a day and 2 bales of silage. The way they've been eating the hay, I may even ramp it up to a full bale, I think, today. Just see how that goes. If they start leaving stuff behind, then maybe scale it back. We've probably got enough to do that for a couple of weeks, by which stage I feel like, you know, the grass will have a bit more body to it, and we probably won't need to worry so much. Another couple of things he talked about, so that was, you know, trying to get fibre in their diet. He suggested, so I've talked a couple of times about the stock lick we use, which is one of Greg's products, and I'll show you the bag and stuff for it later. We give that to the Springer cows while they're dry, and that's just got a whole lot of minerals and stuff in it that is really good for them, stuff that they need. And I don't tend to give it to the milkers, but he said, you know, we've got a couple of empty troughs at the cow shed there, chuck some in and just see how they go. It's fed as free choice, so some cows will take it, some will leave it, and just see how they go. As well as that, sodium bicarbonate, we've given a bit to the Springers this year. He said try a bit of that. That's something that's quite regularly fed to cows, helps get their rumen going and stuff. So sodium bicarbonate is basically baking soda. And then the third one was, so the fish slurry that we use, that we spray through the toe infert. So that is inoculated with a whole lot of really beneficial bacteria. Reasoning behind that is that, so we're feeding a little bit of palm kernel to the cows. I didn't actually realise, but palm kernel is actually an antimicrobial, which means it strips a lot of the really good gut bacteria out of their systems. And that's the sort of bacteria that you want in their systems, working away to make them a really efficient cow, you know, make them a really efficient digester, so that they can then turn that energy that you're giving them into the best product, or make the most efficient use of that. If they're going to be digesting that better, it sort of goes to reason that they're going to be putting on better condition, or producing more milk from that. He said just put 20 or 30 litres in the trough at the shed and just see how they go. The idea being that they'll be ingesting that good bacteria, which will then, once in their systems, hopefully multiply and really get their gut going. So that's something I'm going to try. I'm really looking forward to seeing how that goes, and yeah, I'll let you know how the results go. So one of the questions I had quite regularly since we've started this regen stuff is how it stacks up financially. And it's really quite hard, since we're so new to it, it's a really hard question to answer at this stage. Definitely with last season being the drought and stuff, you couldn't compare to a regular, when we're farming conventionally, because production was so much lower. I'll definitely say though that once we go into these paddocks that we've got now that have got the diverse pasture species in them, the cows absolutely love them, and we're just getting eaten. Hey, number 6. The cows just love them, and the production actually jumps up sort of 200 or 300 litres by the only difference being that they're in those diverse pasture paddocks. So not feeding them any differently as far as volume, just I guess the quality of what they're getting. So that's really been interesting. I've noticed that big time this season. So in the first round we had about 20 hectares I think of that stuff that we undersowed back in the drought. So some of you may not have watched the earlier videos, but in the drought we undersowed about a quarter of the farm in some diverse pasture species. So there was there's a perennial ryegrass, some Italian ryegrasses, oats, forage rape, chicory, plantain. Is that everything? I think that's everything. And yeah, it just went absolutely crazy. We got a really good grazing off it back in May with the milkers, and then shut it back up, and I've grazed it with the milkers early in this season, and they just absolutely pumped on that. I was really amazed. And then it was actually noticeable when those paddocks ran out. Made me wish that the whole farm was in it. So that's one thing I will say to people this year. I don't actually have financial figures on that, but definitely noticed in the vat when cows go into those paddocks they milk better. So yeah, one of the goals we had last year with the diverse pasture species was that in our first season we wanted at least 15% of the farm in those diverse pasture species, and thanks to the opportunity that came along with the drought, silver linings say, and undersowing those paddocks, we're now past over 33% of the farm, which is really awesome. We're really stoked with that. We spent a little bit more money on seed last year, so from a financial point of view, that's a bit of a, not a negative, but that's an extra cost. But that was more along that opportunity arose to get those pasture species in our pastures, so we took it while we were there. Going forward, the idea really is to just do that 5 hectares roughly a year in our mixed summer crop. And that should be the majority of the seed that we're sort of spending each year, apart from a little bit of say chicory, plantain going through the toe and fert, or when you get the opportunity to stitch a little bit of different pasture species in, pugging damage and that sort of thing. So yeah, so that extra seed cost I'm talking about won't be there forever. So that was just kind of a one and done in a way to really get us going, and then hopefully those pasture species will naturally spread around the farm a bit. Definitely noticing on the longer round we're having pasture species show up in other pastures that I previously didn't see just because we were on too fast around. But yeah, I feel like we'll eventually get to the point too with that regrassing and with the mixed summer crops where we won't need to carry on doing it, because it's pointless if you get to the point where you're redoing paddocks that have already been done. So by that stage we sort of look at going on to, rather than having a mixed summer crop for that summer feed, having deferred grazing. So we might sort of shut 5 or 6 hectares up, say in September, October, and plan to graze that in January, February. Since we've owned the farm for sort of 7 or 8 years now, we haven't put any conventional fertiliser on, apart from a little bit of urea, so no capital fertilisers gone on. So last season we did the ocean-based mix, which is another one of Greg's products through Soil Connection. So that's a solid fertiliser mix that we put on. That's actually benefited it. I think I've definitely noticed a change in the way the farm's looking. Greg actually said in a year since he was here, been working with us, he noticed the change, so that's really cool to see. So that was obviously an expense that we hadn't been having because we hadn't been putting capital fertiliser on. But in saying that, the fert that we did put on, the ocean base, was actually cheaper than what the equivalent would have cost us if we were using conventional fertiliser. And much like the the seeding and stuff, that the idea is that with that is that you're not going to be stuck on that welfare system where you're just continuously putting on fertilizer. The idea is to put it on for a few years until you kind of get things going, get your microbiology going and your soils and your plants and stuff to a state where you're happy with them, and then kind of go, all right, take a step back now, let's you know, park that up and just see how things go, see how many years we can get out of not having to, you know, continuously put it on. And then, yeah, a few years down the track you might go, all right, we need another dressing, or nah, we're actually still going, things are still going well, let's just leave it. So again, that's another cost that's not going to be there forever, just one of those things that you're getting yourself up and going. So it's one of those sort of startup costs. Really interesting to see, I think, this year and then going forward with the regen, how things do go, and I think we'll be able to answer a few more of those questions that people have. We're currently about 30% ahead of last season, which is really good. We've had a good start. Part of that is last season we had a really rough start, but also I feel like some of those things that we've changed, like you know, the longer round, going into sort of hopefully longer grasses, some of those diversity, pasture diversity that we're getting, that which is starting to show, you know, some results in the vat. So fingers crossed we can hold on to a fair bit of that and yeah, finish a really good season. So this is actually the second year in a row now that we haven't dusted for metabolics at all. So we haven't used any mag oxide or lime flour. I was spraying in front of the springers just briefly with mag oxide through the toe invert, but decided pretty quickly we didn't need to do it. Unfortunately, that means we've got about a ton of mag oxide left. So if there's any farmers in Taranaki wanting a cheap deal on mag oxide, get in touch and yeah, we'll look after you. But yeah, we've only had 3 cows with milk fever this year. 2 of them had actually had really hard calvings, so I think it was more to do with that than actual, you know, real milk fever. And then we just had one random one show up in the herd one day, just a little bit wobbly, which I treated and she came right. The milkers and colostrums, we've done nothing at all, and we've had nothing. We've had, like I said, just that one cow that had milk fever in with the milkers. They'll be getting a little bit through the mag sulfate that we spray on with the fish slurry. So the mag sulfate will leave the magnesium levels in the grass elevated in those paddocks for about 20 days. But apart from that, they've had nothing. So just heading out to feed out to the cows. As I said there earlier, it's been suggested that we just feed a little bit of hay to the cows to try and get their sort of rumens going and try to get them, you know, get them pumping. And yeah, I was pretty dubious about feeding hay to milking cows. I've never tried it before, but I always, you know, kind of assumed that once they calve, they don't want to eat hay anymore. But yeah, they've actually been really getting stuck into it. So it's just one of those things, like they say with regen farming, farming in general. You know, keep an eye on your stock as well as your paddocks and stuff, and just see what they're doing and learn from that. So there's obviously, you know, the fibre in it is what they're wanting, so they are getting stuck into it. So yeah, hopefully get some more fibre into their diet, get their rumens going, and that kind of ties in with giving them the stock lick and the fish and that as well to try and, yeah, get them firing. So just having a quick walk through our crop paddock from last year. So this was our mixed summer crop that we grazed in summertime, then we shut it back up, grazed it in winter with the dry cows, and now it's just about ready to be grazed again. So I undersowed the grasses into this in, I think it was the 25th of July, so basically 2 months ago, and we've had a really good germination. They're doing really well. The plan with this paddock is to leave it for as long as possible till we need to graze it, just to give those plants as much time to establish as possible. But it's going really good. It's really interesting. I was watching a reel the other day, I think it was by the Soil Cowboys, and Carbon Cowboys, and they're a regen group in the USA, I'm pretty sure. But there was a guy saying, you know, one of the things with regen is we're taught to look at what's going on and sort of try and interpretate that. And he said, you know, individual paddocks you treat differently based on what they need, but he said sometimes even individual areas of paddocks. And I've noticed in these paddocks, they're both sort of long-term effluent paddocks, and in the sort of hollows and stuff, I noticed that they were obviously a bit weedier, but they came up a lot thicker in the brassicas and stuff. And then on the sides of the hills, that sort of come back a lot better mix of the grasses and clovers and some of the smaller herbs and stuff. So that was just really interesting stuff to see. I'll actually show you a bit of that in a minute. So it's coming along really well. You see some of the grasses and stuff in there. Brassicas, one with the red bit on it there's chard, some amazing red clover just there. I'm really stoked to see that. So actually some really good red clover look coming through. So the clover's obviously established pretty well. The one that's flowering is, that's the forage rape flowering. So I'm really happy actually to see the forage rape still there, because that's one of the ones, if you graze it too low, will damage that sort of growing little bit of shoot. It doesn't grow back. So it's cool to see that that's grown back so well. I was a little bit worried undersowing in this paddock that I would knock that around a bit too much. That paddock was grazed later in summertime, so I was able to go to seed more. And that's got a lot more of like the Phacelia and stuff like that coming back in it. Hey, that's all for today, guys. As always, thanks heaps for watching. Really do appreciate it. We love hearing your comments, you know, questions, or, you know, asking us why we do certain things. If you would do things differently, you know, we're really new on this journey. Still learning lots. If you would do things differently, let us know, because it's great to learn different techniques and to be questioned about what we're doing. Get in touch if you have any queries or comments or anything like that. Anyway, for the time being, appreciate it as always. Thanks for watching. See you next time.